Your EV is far heavier than a petrol car and will collapse multi-storey car parks and bridges. Your EV is powered by electricity generated by coal, so it's dirtier than my petrol car. Have you heard these and others and ever wondered how anyone could be so stupid as to believe them? Are we becoming a nation or planet of idiots willing to believe anything that reinforces their particular point of view? I'm Dave, welcome to Dave Takes It On, and let's have a look at what is going on. Now you really do need to watch or skip to the end using chapters because Dave Takes It On answers questions we've not needed to answer before, such as how many EV chargers are there in the UK? How big would the queue be if every single EV turned up at a public charger at noon tomorrow? And how long would it take to charge them all? And if every single EV in the country plugged in tomorrow at noon, could the grid cope? The answers are truly fascinating. Well, let's start by answering the two statements we open with, by spending a few seconds, that's all, on Google. A Tesla Model 3 weighs 1,765 to 1,828 kilograms, depending on which variant. An MG4 weighs 1,726 kilograms. A Range Rover weighs 2,695 kilograms. BMW 5 Series weighs 1,790 to 2,230, and a Mercedes E-Class weighs 1,825 to 2,285. So fact one, there are many much heavier cars already on the roads that haven't already collapsed multi-storey car parks and bridges. That took just a few seconds to confirm. Well, second, go to Google again, type in National Grid, and there's a massive live channel showing how the electricity is being generated at this particular second, minute, week, month or year. The grid today, 2nd of January 2024, reports 0% coal at present, with gas at 33% and renewables at 29%. Noticeably, solar is nil, as it's really dull and overcast and already getting dark. Well, fact, today coal produced zero electricity, and in the last week it was 0.3% from our single remaining coal-fired power station. And that one is scheduled to finally close in September this year, 2024. So less than a minute to confirm that coal does not produce any meaningful electricity, and even that tiny amount will stop altogether later this year, forever. So, are the people who use these easily and instantly disproven claims stupid? Are they ignorant? Well, obviously some probably are, but they cannot all be stupid or ignorant. So why do they believe these false claims, which they could easily prove are false in a few seconds? One Australian anti-EV YouTube channel, no, not the Electric Viking, claims that EVs cannot possibly succeed because there are not enough chargers in existence at the moment. He claims that if all the EVs went to the chargers at the same time, they could not charge. So EVs cannot work and they should be banned. Well, at the end of this video, I actually do that and other calculations, and the answers are insane. Well, let's see Google once again. Figures vary wildly, so I've used multiple sources, but there appear to be around about 5,000 EV chargers in Australia last year, and just over 100,000 BEVs, that's full battery electric vehicle. And that's pretty proportionate to the UK, who've got 12 times as many EVs and 12 times as many chargers, so fairly similar proportionately. I exclude hybrids as some of those are self-charging. Now, assuming that nobody charges at home at all, ever, and all of them head to the charger at the same time, there would be about 20 EVs for every charger. Now, that's the queue, and if they all take about 30 minutes to charge, that's a while. But one survey from Whitcar in Australia claimed that over 80% of all Australian EV owners can and do charge at home. So obviously they will not all set off and arrive together. They don't need to. Well, let's say a silly example, half of them do road trips every day and do actually need to charge every day at a public charger. So in that case, 50,000 cars would turn up at 5,000 chargers. That's just 10 cars per charger, and that would take about 5 hours to clear. But of course, he ignored the answer to the question, what would happen if every single ICE car in the country all went to the petrol station at the same time? I do love these equations, so here goes. Okay, I need to check the number of petrol stations in Australia, and there's hugely wild figures about this, but it seems to be around about 7,000, and they have anywhere between 2 and 6 pumps per station. How to check it? Well, look in comparison. The UK is about 8,500, so 7,000 sounds okay, maybe a bit on the high side. There are 20 million ICE cars on the roads in Australia, so if all of them headed to the petrol station at exactly the same time, you'd have an average 2,800 cars at each petrol station, or between 500 and 1,400 per pump. Now that's a queue on a massive scale. While EVs would take 5 hours to clear the queue, 500 ICE cars at each pump in the best case scenario of 6 pumps per petrol station, and each taking just 5 minutes to fill, that would take 41 hours to clear the queue. That's nearly 2 days. Well, it seems the argument's the wrong way round. And we ignore one other obvious tiny little detail. While 5,000 EVs could all charge consecutively, as the grid normally does have sufficient power, 28,000 ICE cars would empty every petrol station's storage tanks in a matter of hours, and with no chance of refilling every single one the same day. We've actually seen this happen during the tanker drivers' strike. So we must conclude that these people who spout this nonsense either never even think about what they're claiming, they just accept what they see or read or are told as gospel, or they don't bother to find out. Now, so far, I can see no harm in their stupidity or ignorance or dogged belief despite the facts. I myself has made such silly claims without proof in the past. I remember when I first ran a diesel car on vegetable oil. Everybody told me it would blow up my engine. And my own logic stated that if it was that easy to do, then everyone would be doing it, because waste vegetable oil is free. I believed them. But then I watched Top Gear, where I saw Jeremy Clarkson driving a Volvo estate diesel round the racetrack, running on vegetable oil. Well, the reason for starting Dave Takes It On video channel is to actually take on all myths and misconceptions. So 15 years ago, I bought an old Citroen ZX diesel for 50 quid. Had a few weeks MOT left on it. It's probably worth 50 quid in scrap. And I decided to try it. Well, filled it with vegetable oil. It did run, but it was so rough, had so little power, and so much thick smoke from the exhaust pipe, it was totally unusable. And once stopped, it was almost impossible to start. Well, just a little bit of analysis, and I found that the injectors are fine-tuned for nice runny diesel, and they don't like thick, blobby vegetable oil. But checking the viscosity of veggie oil versus diesel, I found that if I heat veggie oil up to about 70 degrees centigrade, it goes really runny. In fact, it has the same viscosity as diesel does at around 0 degrees centigrade. And my car starts easily on diesel at freezing point. So I heated the vegetable oil up to 70 degrees centigrade. Don't forget the heat exchanger off the radiator coolant fluid. That runs at 70 degrees centigrade. And once I've fed the fuel through it, the car ran perfectly. I still have a video showing a Renault Laguna diesel running on fresh veggie oil on YouTube. It has over 150,000 views. It's currently number 5 on Google search. It's still getting views after 15 years. So we find the first difference. I no longer take everything or anything I read or see or hear as true, but always do some basic research for myself. I hope this means I never blindly pass on false information, although on occasions the interpretation of that data may prove, with further research in the future, to be wrong. But these people seem to just accept everything as long as it fits in with their beliefs, and that is a dangerous route to follow. Others must know the truth, but spread the lies anyway. Even I've found if you portray a negative title and thumbnail on a video, gets more views than a positive video. I believe that some of these myths and lies are a deliberate strategy to make money. Well, shame on you. But we now reach a junction where we differ dramatically that I don't yet understand. If I buy a mass-produced car I don't like, or is unreliable, or a disaster on wheels, I get rid of it and I put it down to experience. If anyone asks me if it's any good, I tell them my experience, but also add, well, yeah, but there are probably thousands or millions of people who are quite happy with them and think differently. Go and find out for yourself. Well, today these negative people find that totally insufficient and set off what is very much like a crusade to me. First, to prove to the world that this particular car or model or make is a disaster, but then go way beyond that and try to prove that every single one of these models is bad, and then to take it to the max and set about trying to convince others who have this car and model that they were wrong to have bought it and should immediately get rid of it. This, in my opinion, is even more dangerous. Well, going back to my veggie oil, I was constantly told I should stop it as it was illegal. It isn't. It would blow up my engine. It didn't. It would produce evil exhaust fumes. It didn't. Emissions were actually cleaner than running on diesel. Well, even the MOT inspector spouted these falsities as he handed me my pass certificate. And when I challenged him as to how he knew this, the answer every single time was either, well, everybody knows it, or I know someone who did it and it did blow up. Well, when I questioned just a little bit further as to who it was always along the lines of, well, it was a friend of my sister's who has a neighbour whose boss at work knows someone who tried it. It was never a first-hand experience. So, back to EVs. To not like an EV is okay. That's fine. To avoid an EV that you don't like or have had a bad experience with is also okay. And to pass on your experience of an EV to others is also healthy and normal. You don't want them to suffer like you did. But to try to prove that every single one of possibly millions of EVs driving around the roads quite happily is bad, as your EV is definitely not natural or healthy. To do that when you don't even own an EV, probably never even sat in one, is just simply crazy. But to then set up a campaign to actively get out there, try to find people and try to convince those people who do own one to get rid of them is, well, that's probably a bit of a problem that might be heading towards needing professional help. Well, I receive many comments from EV haters, they're so easy to spot, who watch a 10 or 20-minute video of mine about owning an EV or the beauty of an EV, and then they set about telling me why I'm wrong and EVs should be banned. Why does someone spend 20 minutes of their life watching a video about a product they will never buy, have never tried, and actively hate? That, to me, seems really strange. Why then, having probably never sat in one, never driven one, never owned one, do they tell me what is blatantly not true, easily disproved by spending a few seconds on Google to try to convince me I'm wrong? If there are any of you out there who can explain this bizarre behaviour, I would love to hear from you. In the meantime, rant over. Let's blow away some of those myths and look into the stats in the form of mini factoids. EV sales are increasing, and last year they increased by 36% globally. They're not going away. PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, ZapMap and the government surveys all predict that 80% of all cars sold by 2035 will be EVs. They're on the way. EVs run on electricity that is mainly renewable these days, typically about 40%, but on occasion that exceeds 100%, and we export excess green electricity to Europe. In December 2022, the grid ran totally 100% renewably green for a continuous period of 25 hours. The grid calculates that there will be regular 100% renewable power for extended periods of time by 2025, next year. The electricity produced by fossil fuels is no longer coal, but mainly gas. Coal power stations in the last year produced only 1% of our electricity from the single remaining power station, which itself is due to shut down permanently in September this year. A combined cycle gas turbine power station has an efficiency typically around 50%, versus your ICE car is typically 20%. A solar panel in the UK is now more efficient than most ICE car engines. Around 80% of EV owners can and do charge at home. Increasing numbers of people with an EV charge at work. Record number of EV chargers, 16,000, were installed in 2023, and this missed government targets. More than this are likely to be installed in 2024. There were 1.2 million EVs in the UK in 2023, and there are nearly 60,000 EV public chargers. If we all turned up at noon tomorrow to charge at a public charger, there would be 20 cars queuing at each charger, and that would take some around about 10 or 12 hours to clear. Now, in reality, if all who actually needed to charge at a public charger turned up at noon tomorrow, there'd be less than 2 cars at each charger, and that would clear in half an hour or so. The average time taken to charge now is 40 minutes. The average public charger is used for less than 7 hours a day. Or conversely, it's vacant for 17 hours a day. Queues are formed because we all choose to use them at specific, concentrated times. The average mileage for a private motorist is now approaching 5,000, that's 100 miles a week, and the average EV now covers over 150 miles on a single charge. So the average private motorist now only needs to charge once a week for less than 30 minutes. National Grid is capable of providing over 62 gigawatts of power, but we have interconnectors to Europe that can add another 8 gigawatts if needed. The average output in 2024 is less than 30 gigawatts. There are over 400,000 EV chargers in the UK, that's home, destination, workplace and public. Of those, around 60,000 are public chargers, comprising 15,000 slow chargers, less than 6 kilowatts, 25,000 fast chargers, averaging 11 kilowatts, 10,000 rapid chargers, averaging 50 kilowatts, and 10,000 ultra-rapid chargers, averaging 100 kilowatts. The average power of all public chargers is 31 kilowatts. The average power of other chargers is 7 kilowatts. So the average power of all chargers, private and public, is 10 kilowatts. If every single one of the 1.2 million EVs went to an EV charger at the same time, there would be just 3 cars per charger, and the queue would be gone in less than 80 minutes. If 400,000 plugged in simultaneously today and charged at the average of 10 kilowatts, the grid would need to be capable of providing 4 gigawatts just for the EVs. Today, the grid has 40 gigawatts excess capacity not being used. We could easily handle 3 million cars all plugging in simultaneously, and there'd be no blackouts. And the current grid could handle 30 million EVs all plugged in if the charging is staggered. Plug them all in, no blackouts. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. I'm Dave. Well, thanks very much for watching. If you have enjoyed this video, please click the like button. And if you'd like to see more, please subscribe and click the notification bell so we can notify you next time we launch a video. And a massive thank you to all our Patreon supporters. It is your support that enables us to go out and make these videos for you. So thank you very much for your contribution. I'm Dave.